Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Book Club podcast with your hosts Sydney Timmins and Becky Lawrence. We would like to take this opportunity to let you know that we will be covering a diverse range of mental health topics that may be distressing to some listeners. You can find a full list of the topics being covered in each episode in the show notes. Please check the show notes before listening to any of our episodes.
Welcome to another podcast from the Mental Health Book Club. Today we're going to be looking at a book called Anxiety Girl by Lacey London. We've both had a good read of this book and Sydney is going to tell you more about the book. So Anxiety Girl was published on the 7th of April 2017 by SSO Publishing. It is a Kindle edition. It has 224 pages. There are several different ratings, but I looked at Goodreads and at Amazon's. So on Goodreads, this book has a rating of 4.04 stars, and that's over 49 ratings and 12 reviews. And on Amazon, it's a rating of 4.9 stars with 14 reviews. We didn't think it was as good as those.
Go for it though. Go for it. So my rating, I gave it 3 stars because I thought actually the portrayal of the anxiety was pretty good. However,
I gave it 2 stars. I think that it was very simply... the story itself I thought was too predictable and stereotypical, and some of the characters I don't think were explored deep enough, which we're going to look at later on. But so I did give it 2 stars, I'm sorry.
So I think I'll start off with the book description. So the book description says that 1 in 4 people will be affected by mental health issues at some point in their lives. But it couldn't happen to you, could it? Sadie Valentine is just like you and I, or so she was. Loving life in the glitzy and glamorous Cheshire village of Alderley Edge, Sadie Valentine thought she had it all. With her gay best friend Aldo, or Aldo, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, I'm going to go with Aldo. For company, Sadie spends her time sipping bubbles amongst the glitterati in her many local bars and restaurants. After a series of unfortunate events in her life, including battling a broken heart, Sadie finds herself in a dark hole that seems impossible to crawl out of. Keeping her mask in place on a daily basis proves harder than Sadie anticipates, and when she is dealt with more blows, her positive exterior starts to crumble. Once a normalish woman, mental illness wasn't something that she really thought about, but when the 3 evils, anxiety, panic and depression, creep into her life, Sadie wonders if she will ever see the light again. Sadie soon realises that sometimes it's not quite as simple as picking yourself up and carrying on. Once you have hit rock bottom, there's only one way to go. With Aldo by her side, can Sadie crawl out of the impossibly dark hole and take back control of her life? The characters in this novel might be fictitious, but the feelings and emotional experiences are very real. Lacey London has spoken publicly about her own struggles with anxiety and hopes that Sadie will help other sufferers realise that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So, I think the first thing I'm going to ask Becky, what are your initial thoughts of the book description? So when I gave you the book, what did you think?
I thought that I didn't like the word when they use she's not normal now. I didn't like that. I think that plays into some of the stigmas that we've been talking about before. Yeah. But she does, I like the fact that it's meant to be a normal person who suddenly realises that the mental health is affecting them and the story of that. So I do, it is a nice, sweet story, really.
Yeah, and I also think that it's more positive, isn't it? When you read it, you go, actually, this could be a good book about anxiety. Actually, someone has portrayed it well within a fiction book. So sometimes I find that in fiction, mental illness, if it is present, isn't necessarily true to life. Yeah. Whereas by reading this description, I would hope that it's going to be a nice true to life description of what it is like to have anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
So she also suffers from panic attacks during this book. And so we'll talk about that in a bit more detail as we go on.
Yeah.
So Sadie Valentine is a 21-year-old artist.
She's set up as this artist, able to do that because her mother has bought her a flat and she's able to put her paintings into a club where the rich and famous see them and buy them, and seems to somehow get by with that. She's not a struggling artist until the club won't put her paintings up anymore. But I think it does show that she's a creative person, and I think that it's a interesting job to go with.
Yeah, definitely. With this, I don't know about you, but it talks about her being this girl that sips bubbles and is around all of the rich and famous, and that, yes, I get it, that most people wouldn't necessarily think that the rich and famous may be impacted by mental health issues, but did you find it hard to relate to her as an individual? Because our lives aren't like that.
Yeah, I've not had a flat handed to me. I've not been able to do whatever I want whenever I've wanted, as she can. So yeah, no, I agree. And I didn't quite believe that she'd gone from the poorer area of Manchester, yeah. And then she, is able, because her mum wins the lottery, to move to a posher area. And yet there's no discussion about her past. She must have had friends before. She must have had experiences. And none of that is actually portrayed in the book. And she doesn't seem to have really anything from her past.
Yeah. I couldn't find anything from her past. And as I said, I'm not saying that people that have it all can't suffer from mental illness, but for the commoner, say, like you and I, we wouldn't necessarily relate to her on that level. However, I did feel that the portrayal of her anxiety later on, I could relate to quite a lot. So she has a strained relationship with her mother. As you said, won the lottery, gave her a luxury apartment. I think that was kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, but she feels that being given that is a sense of abandonment. She felt her mother gave her the apartment because her new boyfriend didn't like her as a her daughter, and it was a way to sort of get her out of the scene and let her mum do whatever she wanted.
Yeah, as a kind of a way to go, well, I've finished my motherly duties, here you go, here's an apartment, get
18th
on with life.
birthday, off you go, yeah.
I do think that's quite harsh.
I think so too. I mean, if I think of myself at 18, there was no way, and I had moved out of home for various reasons. No one gave me a flat.
You're a bit fixated on that. No one gave me a flat.
I want a flat. But I think of myself at 18, and you're not capable of looking after yourself completely.
That's true.
I know, I teach a lot of 18-year-olds, and I wouldn't trust them to buy me some milk, some of them. So
that's hilarious.
There's some very lovely children, I have to say. But yeah, I do think that's a very young age to just be handing your responsibility over, and that's not what I think you should be having children to do.
I like the fact that she does have quite a close relationship with her best friend, Aldo.
Yes.
Who was originally called Alan, but he changed his name to Aldo.
Because it's better as a famous hairdresser.
Yes.
Now, I like Aldo as a character. By the end of the book, I absolutely adored him. But from the beginning, as I was reading it, I was telling Sydney that actually it annoyed me that he is portrayed so stereotypically. There is going to be gay hairdressers out there that, have short bleach blonde hair and do an act in a very stereotypically gay way, but I thought that she could have given him a lot more depth to begin with, and actually given him a bit more appealing character from the beginning of the book.
That is true. I must admit, he does grow as a character through this book.
He's such a faithful friend, though, and he's a friend that we all wish we could have by the end of it, because
definitely.
He is there for her all the way through.
What did you think about? She has a group of lady friends, Pippa, Ivy, and Zara. What did you think about these guys?
Well, you don't actually get to know a lot about them. They are in the book very superficially. And they are portrayed very superficially as characters.
Yes.
They are sipping champagne, and there isn't much more to them. She portrays them as they're only there to actually go and get a millionaire husband. And I just wondered the whole way through, why is she friends with these girls?
They are pretty horrid to her throughout the book, I have to admit. So there are points during the story where it discusses her interaction. So she's struggling with anxiety, she is struggling with her depression, and they are so derogatory and rude to her. I don't know how she held out until the end of the book to tell them to go away.
Yeah, and I think that's just because she wasn't in a place where she felt she could stand up for herself. But I don't even know, they do write into the book that Aldo doesn't like these girls, and I think I just don't know why she's friends with them.
Me either.
Maybe it's because, she has moved from this other area and they're the only ones that she could get into the group with, but they seem very cliquey as well.
Yeah, it does discuss that she really enjoys going out and walking and enjoying the countryside and stuff, and that she was struggling to find anyone that would fit that profile, particularly because she's now in with the rich and famous crowd, and so she would hide that from them, so she wouldn't tell them that that's what she liked to do. So she meets these girls, and they seem to be her only girlfriends.
Yeah.
in the entire book, which, as I say, is quite sad.
It's a real bonus that she found Aldo.
Oh, definitely. So,
or Alan.
Yeah, she found Alan, or Aldo. I love the fact that he calls her Shirley.
Yes.
So the entire book, there is this running thing where Aldo calls Sadie Shirley, which at points I did get a bit confused about, but I really love the fact that he calls her Shirley.
Well, it's because the Shirley Valentine, so it is, and I think it's sweet. And even though she hates it, she loves it. Like, it's one of those,
Terms
pet
of
names.
endearment.
Yeah, and it really shows that she hasn't really got family, in that her mother has pretty much abandoned her, and so he is her family. So it's like your dad calling you a sweet name, or it's that kind of expression, I think. So it's a real term of endearment.
I like the fact that you said that, like, it's like when your dad calls you a sweet name. I don't think I ever was called a sweet name.
Oh, my dad has one for me.
Oh, what is it? Go on, tell us.
Squeaky, because when I sneeze, I do sound like a small mouse on helium.
That is true. That is very true. But basically, what has happened in the recent past, so 2 months prior to the beginning of this book, Sadie has split up with her fiancé Spencer. So she thought that they were going to get married. It was all looking bright and rosy, and then he basically turns around and dumps her.
Yeah.
So not only does she have this strained relationship with her mother, she's now got this heartbreak, which the girls, Ivy, Pippa and Zara, they really downplay this. They are like, you were only with him for 5 minutes. Are you still moping about your breakup? They're not very supportive or understanding of Sadie's situation.
No.
And that really hurt, I think, for me. She describes her breakup as feeling like she's bleeding inside. She was never allowed to express this pain, and that she believes that if she let it out, she would continue to perpetuate the memories. So if she holds it in and hides it from the outside world, eventually those memories will disappear, and I think that's really sad.
Yeah, and I think this shows why you can see her mental health sort of suffering, where you can see that she's feeling that she can't express herself. She's feeling she's having to hold things in. And when you do that, you are actually... Your mind is suffering. It does none of us any good to hold on to bad feeling and to push it down. And I think if she had somebody she could talk to early on, if she'd trusted Aldo enough, and I think he would have listened to her, but she didn't trust him at that point enough to let him in.
Well, when you've got friends like Ivy, Pippa and Zara, who would?
Yeah, exactly. So I think if she might have stopped things from progressing in the way that they did.
I also found it sad that I keep saying sad, but I think it is, that she continued to put Spencer up on this pedestal of being perfect. She it's in the book, it says that Spencer and her relationship was perfect. It was making her believe that fairy tales did exist, they were going to have the happily ever after, and then he was extremely cruel to her. I thought that was really difficult to take on board, personally.
In a way, I do think, because she is young, she's in her 20s, isn't
21.
she? Young and naive, as it's her first real serious relationship. It is a bit of a whirlwind, and I think most of us can think back to our first serious relationship like that and know that it's not till afterwards you realise what happens. But even afterwards, she seems to put him up on that pedestal, and I think it's because she doesn't feel that it could be his fault, even though he's the one that does it.
Yeah, it seems like she's internalising everything as her fault, that she's the one to blame for the breakup of this relationship.
Which, for a mother that's abandoned you, you are going to feel feelings of worthlessness. And I think that may be what she was, underlying all of this. She never really deals with why she was so sort of perceptible to these things, And so I think if she, went back to the fact that she feels so abandoned by her mother, it then feeds into her, well, if my mother can abandon me, then
everyone can.
Yeah, and that means I'm worthless, and therefore, people are going to suddenly disappear, and it's your fault again, even though actually what he did was very cruel and was him.
Yeah. Also, the fact that it states that he broke her trust, which he does. He completely breaks the trust that she had in him. And to be honest, having that trust in him in the first place would have been difficult, particularly with the way her mother acts. And we'll discuss more about how she acts, because she is really, really, really dismissive. And I'm going to add some more reallys in there, because I think it's quite intense, the disapproval that she shows for Sadie. At one point, she basically turns around and tells her that her job and her career choice is a joke, and that kind of is sad, that she's like full disdain about Sadie pursuing a career as an artist. She keeps telling her that she needs to go and get herself a real job.
Does it ever say that before she won the lottery, what job did she have?
The mother?
Yeah.
No. Not that
Because it doesn't even... She doesn't have a job currently because she won the lottery and she
doesn't need it.
She's just going on holiday every 5 minutes. Even her boyfriend doesn't have a job because he seems to be jetting off with her whenever they feel like it. So it really is, you know, what right has she got to judge her daughter for having any kind of job when she doesn't have one at all and seems to have no history of having a job? I mean, there might have been, it's just that the author hasn't written that in.
Also, she doesn't hold back. She doesn't mince her words, does she, through this book?
No. But then sometimes the people closest to us know exactly what to say to hurt us the most, don't they?
That is true. But she desperately wants that approval. And through the book, you can see Sadie's desperate attempt to get her mum to go, actually, you know what? I like that, or that's good. It's kind of sad because she doesn't necessarily... Well, she doesn't know her biological father. It's always been her and her mother. And then this additional boyfriend called Mick comes onto the scene. And he doesn't, obviously... approve of her choices either.
Yeah.
But she finds that particular relationship is difficult to handle. So why would you trust anyone else?
Yeah. And so for a girl who, you know, is being abandoned by her mother at 18.
And by her father.
At birth or before. And so she was going to have real trust issues. But I think she also has she just wants to be loved, I think. And I think that's why she does accept Spencer probably quicker than she probably should have done. And that's why it becomes a bit of a whirlwind. Because I think she just wants she wants that knight in shining armour to come riding in on the horse and save her and take her away. And when that doesn't happen, I think part of the mental health issues she has afterwards is the realisation that life isn't like that. You know, you don't get stuff handed to you on a plate. You have to fight for it. You have to work for it. And I think that it's that realisation that feeds into it as well.
She also has this perception that actually her dad is this knight in shining armour. Did you notice that? She has this fantasy where her dad has been watching her ever since he left, and that he knows everything that's happened, and that he's our guardian angel in all of this.
Yeah, the watching is a little bit creepy more than actually supportive. I think that, I mean, I have both parents and they were married the whole time, so I don't know what it must be like to not know one of your parents, and it must spark your imagination to fantasize. And so I can kind of understand why she would fantasize. Why would you fantasize about having a horrible father that abandoned you? But actually,
with her relationship with her mum being as difficult as it is, you would hope at least one of your parents was interested in you.
Yeah. So, but then if he was, he would have been around.
Yeah. So you said earlier that she loses the fact, so she's exhibiting her artwork at a local club where the rich and famous can see it and buy it, and she has got a call from the owner of the nightclub saying, we've sold a painting, can you come in? So she goes in to see them, and he turns around and says, I'm sorry Sadie, we can't exhibit your work here anymore. We're going to do a revamp of the club and your art doesn't fit in with our new style, which I think is a bit harsh personally, but
he blames his new partner. He says it's not me, it's the new partner that wants to reinvent everything and stuff like that, and really sidetracks the sort of blame.
But he does give her a little lifeline. Here's a list of places that you could try.
I thought he was quite sweet, and he does pop up a couple of times in the book where they run into each other and he's always like, oh, I really want to see you and I really want to meet up and have lunch and stuff. And I do think that actually it's another person in Sadie's life that actually would have been supportive if she'd trusted him.
I think also it would have been nice for Lacey to have expanded this character a bit, because as you said, he pops in and he pops out. I think it would have been a bit better to understand him a bit more, so have a bit more interaction between him and Sadie that we could see. So I think, he was a good guy. I liked him, but I think he could have been a stronger character. So as a result of getting told by the club that she can no longer exhibit her work there, she then has to tell her mother. So the mother that does not like the fact that she is an artist in the first place, but now she's lost her only income stream. So she actually is really, really quite rude to Sadie. So I've got a direct quote from the book here. It says, "You need to sort yourself out. Don't be thinking that I'm going to bail you out. I've been more than good enough to you. This is a wake-up call. It's time for you to grow up." How nice of a mother.
It's that it's your problem, love, get on with it.
Yeah.
It's that abandonment, and it's so I think again it's like what happened to her at 18 all over again. Her mother is pushing her even further away.
Yeah, and also her mother was not exactly supportive when
No.
she broke up with Spencer. And again, it talks about that you really expect your parents to be supportive of you. They're supposed to be there to lend a helping hand when you hit rock bottom, but not kick you whilst you're already down. And unfortunately, her mother does repeatedly kick her while she's down. So she states, or Sadie says, that she feels that her heart has been ripped out and smashed into a million pieces. Her mother then turns around and tells her, don't worry about it, it's plenty more fish in the sea, get on with it.
Which is phrases that people will say to you when you have a breakup, you get told all these things. But often, especially immediately after the breakup, you're not in the frame of mind to hear it because you are just so broken up.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the one person that you think has to be really there to support you is MIA.
Yeah.
She then goes on to meet Ivy. So Ivy, they meet her at the club, and also Pippa and Zara show up, and Ivy asks her how she's doing, and she is still feeling quite hurt about her breakup with Spencer, and as a result then Ivy is really dismissive of her feelings and goes, well, you were only together 5 minutes, I don't know why you are not over him yet.
Yeah, and just reinforcing what her mother said to her, really.
Yeah, and I thought it was difficult when she turned around and said that Sadie is thinking that she wants to tell her that even the mention of his name makes her feel like she's being stabbed repeatedly. But,
It's quite graphic.
Yeah, she brings it up, like Ivy brings up, how are you doing? Are you getting over Spencer? And she feels like she has to lie.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, no, I'm completely over it.
To her friends, which just shows how not friends they really are.
Yeah. How did you think? So the opening of the book, it's Sadie with a guy, and she's been told by Pippa that the best way to get over a breakup is to get back on the horse and get back in the dating game.
Yeah, which is often a phrase that is used when you do go through breakups and stuff. But she's not feeling it.
No, she is completely the opposite end of being happy with the situation.
Yeah. Well, she says that she feels that she dresses up to go out and it's like putting on a costume. It's a fake persona that she is putting in front of these guys to try and get them to buy her a drink and to chat to her and stuff. So she's not being herself in any way. And I think the superficial nature of those girls means that it kind of is trying to make her that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the beginning of this book, it's really about how down she's feeling, how difficult she's finding just continuing with everyday life, and how that as a kid she could sit down with an Enid Blyton book and have a chocolate bar, and that would be the only thing she would need to bring up her spirits, and that she wishes it was that easy. And yes, don't we all?
Yeah, I mean, massive Enid Blyton fan when I was a kid, so yeah,
And
I can
chocolate
definitely
fan.
and chocolate. I can definitely see how that would have made things better. But yeah, she is starting to realise, and maybe this is the age. I mean, she's mid-20s. She's starting to realise that life isn't all as good as she maybe thought it was.
Yeah, and she starts to tell herself off for the
Yeah.
way she's feeling. I think that's also quite difficult to read, because I can definitely empathise with that. I would tell myself off repeatedly. Like, why can't you leave the house? Why can't you do this? You're just being silly. Just get on with life.
Yeah, I totally relate. I think there are times you want to get yourself going, but there's something in your body that's telling you not to, and it's something that you can't even deny. We tell ourselves, oh, well, we should be able to do this physically. I can walk out of the door, so why can't I walk out of the door? And we forget that actually our mental capacity actually has a bigger control over the rest of our body than our body has over our brain in any way.
So Aldo lives with Sadie in
yeah.
her apartment. They seem to have a good relationship. They get on with each other really well. And as we see, Aldo really is her rock. However, he's got a new squeeze, as she calls him, which is Edward. And whilst she is moping around in her apartment, she overhears a conversation. And Aldo turns around and tells Sadie that he is planning to move out of the apartment and in with Edward.
Yeah, and this is almost like the last straw for her. It's another thing that means that she feels abandoned by him, and so it's another point in her life when people have just left, and she feels like they don't care about her. And actually, it's far from the truth. And at this point, I'd like to say I wish that the squeeze, Edward, had been developed more, because I think he comes across as a
bit superficial as well.
Yeah, and it's a shame they don't get into his details better, because he also seems to really like Sadie. He seems to be supportive as well. He allows Aldo to spend the time that Sadie needs with her, and without complaint. And so I think his character could have been developed more as well.
Yeah, I agree. So far, to summarise, she has this overbearing and dismissive mother.
Yeah.
She's had a breakup with her fiancé, which would impact anyone. She has lost the place that displays her artwork, so that she now has no income. And Aldo has decided that he's now moving out of the apartment and moving in with Edward.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. This is meant to have happened within a matter of basically a couple of months, isn't it? It's all happening, and it's all making her feel that way.
But the problem is that she goes and meets the girls again. These girls, really, really hate them, I'm sorry, but they are awful. These girls turn around, and one of them, Pippo, turns around and tells her that it's really funny because she can't keep even a gay man.
Which is such a horror. It's just an awful thing to say. It's just...
How rude.
It is rude. And it's not even just rude to her, it's rude to Aldo and Edward as well. Like, it's just something you shouldn't say.
Definitely not. And it's kind of making light of a actual hard situation.
Yeah.
Your best friend is about to leave you, and you've been relying on him.
And Sadie telling them is actually sort of calling them to be her friends. It's saying, come and help me because I'm having this bad situation. That's what she's saying when she's telling them.
But also during this particular conversation, we find out that Spencer is talking to Ivy.
Yes.
And talking in inverted commas because really it seems like they may be having some kind of flirtation.
Yeah, it's kind of suggested. They don't really ever go into how much detail.
I think they do later on in the book.
Yeah, but not this early on. But at this stage it's meant to be that they're kind of seeing each other, possibly dating, possibly just talking on the phone. But how they even got each other's number is something that Sadie's like, I don't even know how they would have met and exchanged details. But what a friend.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I think at this point I would probably have reacted worse than how Sadie reacts at this point. So at this point, Sadie is like, you know what? I can't deal with this anymore. She starts to feel teary. She's out of there. She grabs her coat. She's off. Which I can understand. If it was me, I'd probably want to kill someone. Not literally kill, but there would be some anger.
Yeah.
I would probably feel a bit of anger in this situation.
Yeah.
But
she feels, another level of abandonment from a friend. So she's had her mother abandoned her, Aldo's abandoned her, so she feels. Now this girl has abandoned her father. So it's all kind of, and Spencer is all at once, and it's a betrayal at the same time.
It's betraying, I think, is probably the key part with Ivy. She's betraying Sadie's trust.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to give you a bit of a description about how she describes how she's feeling at this point, because in some ways I think this kind of is a key point, because this is when she starts to feel the first signs of the anxiety and the panic attack.
Yeah, and just before you read it, I just want to say that the author, when they write about the emotional side of the book and how Sadie is feeling, I think that's some of the best bits of the writing that she does.
Definitely. Out of all of this, I think you could really, if you are someone who has had anxiety and panic attacks and depression, you can definitely relate to how she would feel. So it starts off by saying, my chest becomes painfully tight as I fight back the tears. I feel like I've been stabbed in the back by people I trusted. How can a few words cause you actual physical pain? A lump forms in my throat as I look left and right before running across the dark street. I will not cry in public. I haven't cried in years, and I will be damned if I do it now. So at this point, she bypasses the taxi rank that she was going to go for, and she kind of runs home. So the balls of my feet burn as I race along the road on my heels, but it just pushes me to run even faster than I was before. Numerous cars whiz past me, but all I see is a blur of colour. I can't focus on anything else other than getting back to the safety of home. It's so overwhelming, and I think her descriptions do really well in describing how overwhelming it can feel when anxiety strikes. So she isn't going necessarily into a full panic attack at this stage, but it's kind of starting to show the escalation of her symptoms.
Yeah.
She wants to be back home. She wants to be in safety. She wants to hide her feelings. And I think probably that's the worst thing you can do with mental health, is hide it from people.
Yeah. Which she later learns.
Yeah, exactly. But when she gets home, she finds out that Aldo is out. So Aldo isn't home. She would have thought that if he was home, she would be able to talk to him, feel a bit better. He would stop her from becoming hysterical, as she says. But he isn't there. So that, again, increases some of the anxiety that she's feeling. She also gets really down on herself at this point. She feels pathetic. She feels that she shouldn't be feeling this way. And she also starts to think her mother hates her, her best friend doesn't want to live with her anymore, the man she was planning to marry has disappeared and is now going off with her friend, and that her whole life is pathetic. So she spends quite a lot of time beating herself up about the whole situation she finds herself in, which I think is, I don't want to say sad again, because I keep saying sad, but it is. I mean, how...
It does make you feel sympathetic towards the character.
Exactly.
It makes you feel that in her shoes, you can see why she's feeling the way she's feeling. You just want to go in and give her a hug and tell her it's going to be okay.
Exactly. And she doesn't have that.
No.
There's no one there to do that for her. So all of a sudden, she irrationally decides, you know what I'm going to do? I've got this name on a piece of paper that my mum gave me that has my biological father's name on it. I have this fantasy that meeting him could be what's going to make everything better, because he is this fantastic guy that is my guardian angel. So she goes and tracks him down. What did you think about this bit?
I just think it was the wrong moment to do it. I don't think she was emotionally ready at all. She is, like I said, so desperate to be loved by someone.
She'll take anyone.
She'll take anyone, and she's thought, maybe this is the way to go. Maybe this is the moment to go and find him. Of course, it was never going to end well.
No, I found it really difficult to read the next part, which, when she turns up to the house, she finds a man, obviously, because it's her father, but he's moved on with his life. He has a wife, he has children, and he hasn't been there. It's obvious that he hasn't been there looking out for Sadie. And that's just another nail in the coffin for her. It's like, oh my goodness, everything that I thought is wrong.
I think it's also the fact that he's moved on, and she's still feeling that she should have moved on from her relationship, and she hasn't, and she should be feeling better than she is. So at the same time, it's that the sort of everything around her is telling her that what she is feeling is wrong.
Exactly. And that feeling of emptiness is all-consuming. You said that you've suffered from depression and some anxiety. It's just that empty feeling is just somewhere that no one wants to be. So after she sees her dad, she gets home and she cries a lot, which is fair enough. I think I would cry too. But she doesn't necessarily come out from her bedroom for a while, and Aldo has to come in and see how she's doing. So he comes in and he jokes, "Oh, have you had a hard night?" Thinking that she has
been out with girls.
Yeah, drunk a bit. But she then turns around and goes, "No, actually, I went and saw my dad." And he's kind of floored by this. He was like, "Well, why? Why did you do this?"
Well, I think it's so out of the blue for him. He's got no idea that she is going through this because she hasn't opened up and told him. So to him, it just seems so sudden.
And there's constant discussion, or it's kind of like what's going on in her mind, that she is burying her feelings and that she's feeling like a failure and that she's worthless and that everything is causing her life to get even worse than it currently was.
Yeah. And this is where Aldo really comes into his own.
Oh, definitely. So this is when he's like, right, that's it. We need to go out.
Yeah.
So Aldo is there.
And I think he's at a position where he thinks she's further back than she is, because to him, she's just starting to feel down. So therefore, he does what any friend would have done and tries to cheer her up.
Oh, definitely.
With the things she loves to do.
Exactly. So she decides, because she's got it into her head that no one's going to miss her, so she decides that she's switching her phone off and she's not going to have any contact with the outside world, which is difficult. And she has to lie to Aldo. It's the fact that she turns around and goes, "I'm really happy for you to be moving out," when deep down she really isn't at all. And she's getting to the point where perhaps she's starting to think about ending everything. I don't know, particularly with the disconnecting from the outside world, but Aldo makes her go for a walk. That's one of her favourite things. He drags her out of the house and he's like, that's it, we're going out. And he discusses with her that she should be bottling up how she's feeling, that she can talk to him, but it's difficult because she doesn't feel that she can trust him, even though he is her best friend.
Yeah, but he's left her early, recently, and so I think she feels if she does, she's been betrayed by another friend recently, a so-called friend. So I think she might be worried that if she does, one, he'll laugh at her, he'll belittle her feelings like her when she did try and sort of tell her mum about things that were going wrong. So I think that there's this level of, she probably at this point can't open up to anybody.
And it's also the fact that she thinks that a breakup is nothing. It's this British mentality of just get on with it, which we've spoken about before in a previous podcast and also earlier in this podcast. It's the just
stiff upper lip.
Yeah. Just suck it up, get on with life, and you don't talk about your feelings and you don't tell anyone what's happening. And so she spends quite a lot of time comparing herself to others, which I think is probably one of the most detrimental things you can do.
Yeah.
Is by sitting there and going, well, you know what? Other people have it worse than me. I shouldn't be feeling like this.
And that doesn't help anybody because, yes, I was always told there's always someone worse off than you, so you should sort of be grateful for what you've got. And in a way I agree, but then part of you, that doesn't dismiss the feelings that you're having.
No, exactly.
The feelings that she is feeling are valid, and it isn't just a breakup. It is a breakup, which is heartbreaking. It's also, when you go for a breakup, you almost go for a bereavement period afterwards for all the future you would have had with that person. You then, on top of that, she's had her mother, she's had this friend that's betrayed her, she's visited her birth father for the first time ever. He didn't recognise her. And he didn't recognise her. Which, why would he? He hasn't seen her since
Probably
she was a baby. And she's now 20-something. I can definitely see that she thinks it's one thing that she should have got over, but actually there's a whole lot of things going on in her life.
Exactly. And it's not an easy thing.
No.
I think at this point we should go, breakups are never easy. People that betray your trust means that it's going to be hard for you to trust anyone ever again, and that a day moping around the house, which Sadie decides to do, is not going to fix all of your problems.
Okay, so next in the book, she's back at home and Aldo says that he's going to move a few things into Edward's to start the process of moving out. She stays in bed, she feels guilty, she feels she should be helping, but at the same time she just doesn't feel she can cope with it all.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and then he leaves, she walks out, she pretends to be asleep when he comes to say goodbye, and then he leaves. So she walks out and she realises that it's not just a few things, it's everything. Everything that is his is gone.
Wow, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you think one thing and something else appears to have happened. It's quite a lot to take in, really.
Yeah, and this is where I think some of the good descriptive language comes in by the author, describing what's her first panic attack.
Can you tell me a bit more how she describes it?
Yeah, I think she describes it really well. So she starts by saying she feels overwhelmed, that it's empty, everything starts to seem smaller. She describes, where if I read you an extract, she says, the windows seem smaller, the ceiling looks lower, the walls appear to be closing in on me. I suddenly feel like little lightheaded as my legs start to tremble, attempting to keep them still. I push down my knees with sweaty palms. My heart flutters in my chest and my ears start to ring. Trying to stand up, I collapse into the bed and my chest becomes painfully tight. My head starts to throb as I fight to calm my breathing. I'm having a heart attack. Clutching my chest, I erupt into a series of panic-fueled sobs. Sweat beads on my forehead as I frantically search my pockets for my mobile. Though I think the way she described it there, obviously she doesn't realise she's having a panic attack when this happens, because it's the first one she's ever had.
Exactly, and she describes it feeling like she is having a heart attack. It must be so scary. I must admit, even though I've suffered from anxiety, I've never experienced a panic attack, but just reading this description makes me believe that I never want to ever experience this.
Yeah, she goes on to say, I feel paralysed with fear as I try to calm myself down, which you can just sort of feel the panic and the fear in the way that she's written it. So I thought that was really interesting and she really does think that she's had some kind of heart attack. So she goes and she tries to get a doctor's appointment, but there's no appointment. So she goes to the pharmacy, where that's where they get diagnosed as a panic attack, which I think in a way to her, she's expecting to be told it's something really, a serious medical problem, there's something wrong with your heart. That's what she, is expecting to hear, and instead she's told
it's just a panic attack.
It's just a panic attack, and it's that isn't it, when actually it's her brain going into overload.
So do you feel that the pharmacist at this point is being a bit dismissive? This is what I thought. I thought that when you're discussing mental health issue that felt like you were going to die, that the pharmacist was downplaying everything, and that she was a bit dismissed about how she was feeling.
Yeah, I don't think they mean to, because at the end of the day, if she was having a heart attack, she wouldn't have been sat in front of him. So medically speaking, I can probably see where the pharmacist is coming from, but I definitely think that that if you have been through that and then you turn up and you say you think you've got a heart attack and they go, oh no, it's a panic attack, then you're going to feel that you have been undermined, that this is, it's underplayed, it's just a panic attack, you should just get over it, you're making more out of what it should be, which is what she's been told she's been doing all along. It's just a breakup, get over it. It's just a panic attack, get over it.
It's just perpetuating the way she feels, isn't it?
Definitely. And I don't think he means to, but obviously he doesn't know the whole situation.
Exactly.
Because also she doesn't tell him. He does ask if there's things going on in her life and asks her if she needs help, and she backs down and says no.
I also wondered how much there is to do with confidentiality and speaking to a pharmacist, because they're not necessarily a doctor, where there is this relationship if you get to see the same doctor over and over again, which isn't necessarily the case, to go into much detail with a pharmacist. I mean, I find it difficult when I ring up the GP surgery and the receptionist asks why I need to see a GP.
Yeah. And you don't know, you don't want everyone knowing your business. And she doesn't want everybody to know. I mean, there is a level of confidentiality. He takes her to
a private room,
and he's not going to tell anybody about it, but at the same time, actually
would she know that there's this level of confidentiality? I don't necessarily think she would.
No, I don't know. But then who's the pharmacist going to tell, I suppose? Who would she be scared about knowing?
I don't know if it's a local village pharmacy that she's attended.
Yeah.
Gossips in the village.
Gossips in the village. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, so she finds out this is a panic attack. And then, just to top things off, when she's at home, her so-called friend,
yay,
Pippo, pops by, and she's dressed...
I hate Pippo.
She's dressed amazing, and she walks in, and Sadie's not looking her best. She's been in bed and she's been all over the place.
She's emotionally drained.
Yeah,
is Sadie by this point.
And this has a physical effect on our bodies. It does show, and so because of that, she mocks her. And the description the author uses, she cackles.
Yeah, I really hate Pippo.
The author wants you to, though. The way that
that's
she
the
describes,
whole point, isn't it?
She says, you've been through this, man, a big deal. Who hasn't been through it? You need to pick yourself up. She cackles, she mocks, she tells her, have you gone insane? Which,
it's nice, isn't it?
It's a horrible thing for anyone to say to anybody, have you gone insane? And what are you meant to say? Yes, I have. Now I'm going... What are you going to get out of saying that to somebody? That's what I
nothing.
No. So she tells her she needs to sort herself out. And if it's because she wants a man, she's going to have to do better, because she's not going to get a man looking like that.
Charming. Why, thank you. That makes me feel so much better about myself.
Well, and that's where Sadie goes. She feels inadequate. She feels ashamed, especially when looking at Pippo, who looks immaculate, even though her personality seems a bit flawed.
A bit flawed.
Yeah. And the thing is, she writes, that she wants to agree that it is no big deal. She wants to move on from this. But
I think everybody does in some ways.
But she just can't seem to get herself out of it. And she's so scared about having another one of these panic attacks.
And she's almost in denial that anything is wrong and anything is happening. And because she keeps comparing herself to everyone, she's downplaying how severe this is.
Yeah. So she thinks, well, if I look better, I'll feel better.
It's a good assumption.
It is, and a lot of us do that on a regular basis. There are days when I don't feel amazing, and you put on
that brave face.
You put on a brave face. You go, I go to
slap.
work and I fake a smile for the day, because we all have down days, and that's understandable. But this is more than that. One day of pretending you're okay is not going to make things right.
Fake it till you make it doesn't always work.
No. So she gets all dressed up. She goes to the doctor's.
Yeah, so it's the fact that, so she's seen the pharmacist and she's like, okay, I think something seriously is wrong now, so I'm going to make myself a doctor's appointment. She goes along to the doctor's, but she has made the effort to go to the doctor's. So she's sitting in the doctor's waiting room and she's surrounded by all these people that she believes are actually sick.
Yeah. See, and that's this stigmatisation of mental health not being a real illness. You can't see it, so it's not ill. If you're not sneezing, you're not being sick, your leg's not falling off, therefore, you're not actually sick. That's so not true. Some of the most serious illnesses we have are things you can't see.
Exactly.
And so it's her looking around this waiting room and she feels judged by all the people around her. And then she realises she's like done up to the nines sitting in a doctor's surgery when she's meant to be sick. And so she rubs all the makeup off her face as a sign of, what am I doing? What have I done to myself? And
she gives up her appointment, doesn't she?
Yeah, she gives it to a little old lady, which is really cute. But at the same time, she feels that old lady deserves it better than her. And again, it's that feeling of worthlessness, that actually anyone else it feels like they should be cured better than her.
And then she bumps into someone she knows in the parking lot after she scrubbed all her face. So she's at this point, she's looking, again, worse for wear.
Yeah.
And she sees someone she knows. It's that feeling, isn't it? That you go out, you go to the supermarket, you've got your sweatpants on, and your ex is there. And you go, great. I wanted to be looking immaculate when I saw him, just to show that I'm good.
Yeah.
But it never works out that way, does it? It's always the way.
Yeah. And this is where she then goes back to her bed.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I wouldn't leave.
And Aldo comes. And he wants to take her to the doctor's.
Yeah.
He wants her to have an actual appointment.
This is why we love Aldo. Because he's there. He takes an interest. He looks at Sadie and he goes, something isn't right with you and we need to get you some help.
And he takes it seriously.
Yeah.
He's not saying you get over it. He's saying let's go and get you some help to get over it because you can't do this on your own. And he's willing to hold her hand through it as well, which is really sweet. And she doesn't want to go to the doctor's, so he encourages her to just get out the house. He takes her shopping, something that she usually loves doing. He tries to entice her with shoes.
Yeah, and that is such a big thing about depression, isn't it? You start to not enjoy the things that you did previously.
Yeah.
And in some ways that's a bit of a red flag to go, hang on a minute, if I'm not enjoying the things that I used to do, there's something going on.
Yeah, because your likes and dislikes don't change that much, that you're just becoming disinterested in the life around you.
Exactly.
Then she gets the call from her mother.
Ugh.
That mother who is now doing another abandoning trip. This time she's heading off on holiday and she wants Sadie to check the house while she's away so that she feels the house is being looked after.
And there's no pleasantries, is there? There's nothing like, hi Sadie, how you doing? It's just, Sadie, look after my house. I'm going on holiday.
Yeah. So at this point, they get back, Aldo and her get back home and she says, right, I need to go to my mum's and check the house. And he says, I'll come with you. But
No, thank you. No.
She convinces him that she needs some space and time on her own. She's been with Aldo all day. She needs that. So she heads over to her mum's house.
Yeah. But Aldo, being Aldo, because he knows something's wrong, turns around and says, if you're not back in an hour, I'm coming over.
Yeah. And I think Sadie's, at this point, she loses all sense of time anyway, so she's got no idea what an hour is really. She goes over there and she is checking the house and she notices her mum's sleep medication.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And she starts off by just thinking, I'll take 2.
Yeah, because then if I take 2, I can actually sleep and I escape from all of the feelings that are currently going on and I just get some peace and quiet for a night.
She says 2 of these and I will be free until tomorrow, free of emotion, free of feeling and free of the crippling anxiety I can physically feel weighing me down, which I think's really powerful couple of sentences.
Definitely. And at this point, I have to admit, I do take medication to help me sleep, purely because as soon as I get into bed, all of the negative things that have happened in the day go round and round in my mind, and I just can't fall asleep. So I definitely know where she's coming from here.
Yeah. Then she notices that actually there's about 60 tablets in this pot.
Uh-oh.
And this is where she starts to think about everything that has happened and everything that she's tried, and she starts to feel that there's only one way out.
And that's to take all the pills, yeah?
To take all the pills. So she refills a glass of water and she starts popping sleeping pills into her mouth. And what I think is really interesting is where she describes that she feels that rush of adrenaline as she's doing it.
It's a relief.
Well, she calls it hope, but it's a hope of the fact that she's not going to feel this way anymore.
Yeah.
That's what she is hoping for.
Yeah, for me it was, I want to be free of all of this.
Yeah.
And once I do this, I will be relieved of all of the worries. And I don't know, there's quite a lot of things out there that say that suicide is a coward's way out. But
no, I don't think. I think that's a stigma about what suicide is about.
Definitely. It's the fact that you've got to the point where nothing else feels like it's going to work.
Yeah.
And that this is your only option.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think it's to escape the life, but it's not. She doesn't want to escape
she doesn't want to stop living, does she?
No.
She wants to stop the feeling.
She wants to stop the feelings, and she feels that's the only way. I don't think she actually even consciously thinks, I want to die. She just thinks, I want to get rid of these feelings, and taking these sleeping tablets is what's going to do that. And almost like she wants to be more into a coma. She wants to be comatose, just to get away from...
So her brain isn't working and functioning.
Yeah. But of course we know that it is actually a suicide attempt. And she says there's a tiny bit of her brain that's telling her and egging her on, telling her to do things. She doesn't need to suffer anymore, then it will help her and it will stop her dreading every day, erasing everything that's happened.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful.
I must admit at this point I was in tears, because most of that rang very true from my own personal experiences.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this struck me quite significantly, but Aldo comes to the rescue because he put this time limit on, and thank goodness he put this time limit on. He basically comes into her mum's house, sees her in the bathroom.
He breaks the door down.
Well, she locks him out, so go Aldo, we love you, because he is there and he helps.
Yeah.
So he breaks the door down, he gets her out, and he realises that she's tried to kill herself.
Yeah, well, she vomits, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And he realises that she's got all these tablets, and the thing is, Aldo rings her mum.
You would have thought that from everything he knows about her situation and her relationship with her mother, that maybe that wasn't the brightest of moves.
No. But then he does look after her. He stays with her the whole time. He doesn't take her to a hospital, which I do think maybe
he should have.
Yeah. But he does take her home and he looks after her, and he basically stays with her for, I think it's almost like a week with her, where he just literally constantly with her, almost her own suicide watch to check. He is so worried about her, and he is literally just looking after her the whole time.
How did you feel about the mum's response? Because when Aldo speaks to her mother, all she really seems to be caring about is how her house is. The first thing she says is, what's the problem with my house? Not the fact that Sadie is in a really bad place. And Aldo tries to explain this to her mother, and he ends up getting so frustrated and angry, he basically shouts at her and hangs up.
I think it helps Aldo to realise just where Sadie's been coming from, that actually she's not come from a loving, nurturing home. That means that she has been taught how to deal with these issues and taught that everyone's there for you, and that you've got loving people around you. So I think it helps Aldo to realise that this is one of the reasons this has happened.
Yeah.
And I think he realises that he is all she's got, and he steps up.
Yeah, and I know that you said that perhaps he should have taken her to the hospital, but the next day he does drag her to the doctors. He gets an emergency appointment and he goes with her, and he's like, you are going to the doctors, you are getting something done about this. And she's told she can get CBT in 6 weeks. Yeah, what planet are they on?
Well, it's just, I don't think this doctor really understood just how bad things had got, because otherwise I think he would have offered more than just CBT.
But then when I was diagnosed with borderline personality, the thing that happened for me was that I kind of had the same situation. So I attempted suicide. I failed miserably because I wasn't doing it correctly. And then...
Good for us.
Well, I don't know. Good for you,
Good
maybe.
Yes.
Good for me, because I'm still here.
Yeah.
But once that had happened, the next day, that was when my husband dragged me to the doctors. I was then taken from the doctors to the hospital, which is where I was diagnosed. But because they assessed that I wasn't a risk to myself, they did pretty much the same as what they do to Sadie. They go, right, you're over your suicide attempt, off you go.
Do we think that she is not suicidal then?
I don't think she is, so she wouldn't have been a risk to herself at this point. However, I do think that after a suicide attempt, there should be something. You shouldn't just be told, oh yeah, we'll get round to seeing you at some point.
Yeah, and I think that's why Aldo goes
it's very
a step...
dismissive, isn't it?
Yeah, Aldo goes a step further and he finds this anxiety anonymous group. I can never say that word. Anonymous. I can never say that word, I apologise. This group that's meeting nearby, and he drives her and encourages her and says he's going to go with her, and she persuades him not to, but he does really find that, and it's something that's going to happen sooner. And I think without that, I think she might have ended up back in hospital.
And I must admit, I didn't know that these support groups existed. Did you know this until I looked into it?
I knew, obviously, I think support groups are almost an American idea that we're given, and I didn't know that there was this support group.
So yeah, if you are impacted by any of the issues that we're talking about, you can actually find that I'll put it in the show notes for you, but there are a load of support groups out there that will allow you to speak about your experiences and get more information. And kind of in some ways, these groups are plugging the gaps that the NHS's mental health provisions are failing us to give.
So true. And that's what it does for Sadie. It gives her somewhere. And at the first one, she mainly just listens, and
it's a bit nerve-wracking. Like when I sat and I read the passages where she attends the groups, to be honest, I was impressed that she made it through the door.
Yeah.
Particularly with her anxiety being the way it was.
And before she even walks in the door, she bumps into those friends again outside. And I thought, this is the moment she's going to turn round and run away. But she doesn't. She does make it in. And I'm so grateful for that, because she then can hear about other people's stories. She feels that she is heard.
Exactly.
And that she's got a safe space. And sometimes it is easier to talk to a stranger than it is the people around you.
Particularly when they're so dismissive. Like, you look at her friends. I know Aldo has been there and he's been fantastic. But you look at the way that all the other people in her life treat her, of course she's going to be worried about telling others, because you're just worried about what their reaction is going to be.
Well, you feel that they might judge you, they might think of you differently, and if you love them, you don't want them to change their ideas of you and think that you're weak or whatever. Whereas, in that support group, she thinks, well, everyone's in the same position. We're all vulnerable. And so she almost needs to only open up to the other vulnerable people, because then she's got their secrets. So therefore, they can't tell anyone hers, because she's got theirs.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the reasons why at first she just listens. And I was worried that listening to those other stories would have made her feel that, again, dismissing her own anxiety and making it feel like it wasn't real, because there were people in there that had suffered it from years. There were people that had had grief and bereavements that had caused them to have anxiety through grief. And I did worry that she might think that her anxiety wasn't worthy to be in that support group.
Yeah, there was definitely the opportunity for that, I felt.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
No, she stays, and she does go back, which is fantastic. This is when we meet Ruby. So Ruby is, I think Sadie describes her as being younger than herself, and Ruby takes the stage and tells people about her own dealings with anxiety.
Well, she's a late teen, isn't she? I think she's like 18 years old. She still lives at home. I think she's still at college or school. It doesn't exactly say her age, but I was sort of thinking she was more sort of 18 years old.
Yeah, kind of later teen.
Yeah, still doing, some kind of education, still living at home. And she's had a long battle with anxiety.
And it's interesting to hear her perspective. And we get to see later on, Sadie goes out on her own because she's starting to feel better, thanks to Anxiety Anonymous and Aldo and all of the support he's given her. But they end up going, or she spots Ruby in a cafe. She's unsure whether she should approach her because, there's this confidentiality thing within the support group. But Ruby spots her and beckons her over, and they sit down and they have a chat.
Yeah.
And I think at this point it's probably
a real friend has come into her life.
And it's probably a turning
from
point.
Aldo.
Exactly, it's a turning point because she gets to really start to understand that life can continue even when you have anxiety issues.
Yeah.
And what did you think? So there's a part which I absolutely love because I've recently done this because I've been having some issues with anxiety. Ruby says that she has named her anxiety. Her anxiety is named Frank, and that by kind of detaching Frank from her own person, she can tell Frank to leave her alone and she can deal with her anxiety better. And she suggests to Sadie that she should call her anxiety Anne. And I recently have named my anxiety Bob.
You name everything Bob.
I know. I don't know what it is. I'm a bit obsessed with Bob. So me and Bob have been having quite a bit of a fight recently. So I have to admit, I had never considered naming my anxiety before, but I actually I quite enjoyed it. I found it quite useful because I can go, you know what, Bob, not today, leave me alone. I need to get on with life.
Well, it almost is. It's taking away that it's always going to be part of you.
Yeah.
That it's something inside your head you can't get rid of and take control of. Whereas if it's something that is almost external by naming it, then you can tell it off and you can tell it to, can't use swear words on here, but
No.
tell it to leave the building.
Yeah.
And I think
do that quite a lot in schema therapy. So one of the things in schema therapy is you have modes that you flip into.
Right.
And I have critical parent, and critical parent is very strong. And so not only do I tell critical parent to go away and leave me alone, I also now tell Bob to leave me alone, which is, I think my therapist thinks, I don't know, I'd say that I think she thinks I'm nuts, but of course we are.
You're in therapy.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, no, to be
So
honest.
am I, and I think that it seems it's worth trying. If you're out there and you're thinking, I've got this anxiety and I don't know what to do with it, maybe give it a go. And I think it also adds a bit of humour to it.
Definitely.
And I think, humour is what I find one of the best medicines when I'm feeling down or feeling a bit anxious. It's not a cure-all, but it is something that's going to help.
A positive, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you're naming it something that, especially if it's a word that's saying it Bob and it makes you laugh a little, it might just give you that little bit of relief. And I think anything that is going to help can help. So I think it's a really good strategy that Ruby introduces, because actually Sadie never goes and uses the CBT.
No, well, not that we discover in the books.
No.
So her main therapy as such is Anxiety Anonymous. I also like the fact that when she's discussing with Ruby, she actually opens up and says that she finds that admitting that she has a mental health illness by talking about it makes it more real, and that she actually is a little embarrassed by the fact that she is suffering with a mental health problem. I think that's fantastic that she even opens up to this person about her feelings in such a way. She's never done this.
She's finally got somebody in her life that starts to understand maybe a little of what she's going through. And she does still feel that Ruby is worse off than her. She says she's been suffering with the years, and it might actually put hers in a little bit more perspective sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think that Ruby is definitely a positive in Sadie's life.
I'd like to know more about Ruby. It's again one of these characters that comes in, is there, and you hear bits about her, but I just don't think we get into the character enough.
No, I agree. More Ruby, please, Lacey, more Ruby. I think the next bit that's interesting in Sadie's life is that it's described that she has this mass of blonde, long hair. And that it's beautiful, and that she's been growing it for years, and Aldo, being the hairstylist that he is, really has wanted to get hold of this hair to cut it and do something with it. And she finally decides, because she's feeling better, she's like, you know what, I need a change. And she goes to Aldo, cut my hair.
And we've all done it. I've been through, a breakup or something and decided to change my hair. We've all done it trying to make yourself feel better in a physical way can actually help you feel better in a mental way.
Oh, definitely. And she gets a haircut, and the description makes it sound like it's fantastic, which it should be, because by the sound of the description of Sadie, and he's a top stylist, so it better be good. You kind of go, excellent, but guess who shows up at the door? My favourite person.
But this is it. Her superficial friends, the three of them,
come along,
yeah,
and basically knock on the door, barge their way in. They don't even like exchange pleasantries. They're just in there, and she asks them what they think of her new haircut, and they're like, "Oh, it's all right." And the other's like, "You are so annoying and so rude." And if I could use naughty language, I would at this point, because
they're just they're not supportive at all. And but this is whereas before she's taken it, this is where she turns around and she does not take it anymore.
Yay!
Yeah, she actually steps up.
Sadie tells them to politely, I think with more tact than I would have, to, you know what, who needs enemies when you've got friends like you lot? Get out of my house.
Yeah, and Aldo's impressed.
Exactly, because he's hated them from the beginning, let's be honest. They're not exactly the nicest of people, and we're so happy that she tells them to go away. I wish she'd done it sooner. Yeah. And yeah, I don't like them.
But it was the right time for her. I think this is the point where she actually starts to see the turnaround.
Exactly. So she continues to attend Anxiety Anonymous. Everything's going fantastically well. She sees Spencer in the street. What she would have originally thought, that she would feel sad and anger towards him because of this potential that he has been seeing Ivy behind her back even before they broke up. So apparently, according to Aldo, word on the grapevine is that that's probably the reason why he broke up with her. That she's going, you know what, things are starting to feel good. So she attends, at the very end of the book, one of her last Anxiety Anonymous meetings that we read about, and the facilitator of the group doesn't show. Now at this point I go, wow, this is a bit, I don't know, perfect.
Yeah,
would probably be the
this
word.
This is one of the biggest reasons that I couldn't give it a higher rating, and it was just because
it's just so perfect.
Yeah, everything's going better. She's finally sorting out her anxiety. And then she suddenly realizes that she wants to be a counsellor herself
because the facilitator doesn't arrive. So she goes, you know what? I don't want you all to leave. I'll chair the meeting. And she sits there and she chairs the meeting.
Yeah, so she finds her new career. She's got a new way in to deal with her anxiety. Everything's is hunky-dory and roses.
Yeah, so that's probably one of your biggest bugbears.
Yeah, and I kind of saw
wish
it
life was like that.
I kind of saw it coming as well. I was a bit like, oh, this is what's going to happen. This is where she's going to find her new career.
Particularly when the facilitator doesn't come to the group, you go, oh, this is a bit contrived as such.
And actually I don't know how ethical it is for the counsellor to have not shown up and then
for her to chair the meeting.
And then she then says, you know, when she goes and sees her afterwards, she says, you know, I was actually watching, I was there but I wasn't there because I knew you would take over. And it was just like, well, you could have set her up to fail, and this girl's only just coming out of anxiety, you know, a rock bottom.
I also think that perhaps she's also a little naive about her anxiety. She thinks it's just once she's had a bout of it, it's going to go away. And yeah, I do think that you set her up to fail.
She thinks she's on this new journey. She's a new person. She's got a new haircut. She's got new friends. She's got rid of the old ones, you know, apart from Aldo, who helped her through. And she's got a new perspective. And I think she thinks the rest of it is all behind her and that's it.
But I don't know about anyone else out there, but unfortunately for me, Bob is always there. And he is like a bad smell that follows me around sometimes, and I wish I could get rid of him, but I know he's always going to be there. It's just the way I deal with him.
And some days he does seem further away, and some days he is sitting on your head.
Literally. Last night I did have a restless night when the dog decided that my head was the best place to sleep. Don't you just love animals? So what did you think about this overall? So you gave it 2 stars.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should think about it in terms of how it portrayed the mental health aspects and how the story went.
When it came to portraying the mental health aspects, I think that it was very descriptive and very true to how those feelings manifest themselves and what goes through people's minds at those points. And I thought that was really well portrayed. The part where she gets over it very quickly, I know she needed to move the book on, and that's probably why it happened, but I felt that she got over everything a bit too quick for me.
Yeah, I think because it's the anxiety coupled with the depression, and it seems like she's coming out of the depression. Yes, it's not necessarily a more intense depression that some people may go through, but I felt the same, definitely, that it was a bit quick. But then I guess if it was a book that continued over several about her anxiety and depression, and there was no nice, happy ending, so to speak, that maybe people would not have been interested.
Yeah, I mean, as a novel itself, I think that it is an easy read. I call it a beach read. It's although some of the topics it's dealing with aren't necessarily what you want to read about on the beach, the way that it's written, it's
easy.
It's an easy read. Yeah, it's a lay down and relax and just take it in, and you can read it quite quickly. It's not something that's going to take you a lot hours to read. I know I'm a fast reader. I sped through it, and it's a pleasant story.
So you would recommend it?
I'd recommend it for somebody who just wanted something easy to read and just wanted to know a bit more about what anxiety felt like.
Yeah, I also would agree with that. However, at points I was a blubbering wreck reading some of the descriptions, purely because it did resonate quite a lot with me. So if you have issues with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation, maybe not the book for you, but it could be beneficial to someone that is dealing with you regularly, so that they get an idea of what you might be going through.
Yeah, I think for me, I am not someone who has attempted suicide, although I've had depressive feelings. But reading that scene for me really made me think about what people go through at that point.
Exactly.
So I do think it is a useful book. But when it came to the actual sort of English version of the story and the sort of like English teacher part of me, mainly
teachers.
Yeah, I think the characters needed a bit more development. Sadie's very well developed herself.
But it's the supporting characters could have been a bit
more.
more.
And a bit more background, because she does seem to have anything happen to her before the sort of lottery win.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that'd be a good place to end. If you have been touched with any of the things that we've been discussing today, you can always reach out and contact Rethink Mental Health. They are a charity and they have a helpline that you can ring if you are feeling like you need additional help. And that telephone number is 0300 5000 927. They're open from Monday to Friday from 9:30 to 4 p.m, not including break holidays. But there is help out there. And I will also put all of this in the show notes for you.
And also there is always the NHS. I know we are always saying that they are overworked and there isn't enough, but do reach out to them if you need to.
Go to your GP.
Most of these helplines do have opening hours, whereas the NHS doesn't. So if you are feeling suicidal,
go to hospital.
Please go to hospital, yeah.
Full stop. Don't even hesitate. Just get yourself to the hospital.
Yeah.
So next time, I think we are going to read a book called Dandelion Angel by C.B. Calico. I will put a link in the show notes. I'll put a link on our website. You can get the book through there if you want to read along with us. It is a book that is looking at mothers that have undiagnosed borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, but it's really interesting as well because I've had issues with my own mother, and her issues come from her mother, and it is a really interesting point of view that we are a product of our childhoods, and so it'd be really interesting to talk about that.
Definitely. So until next time, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Book Club podcast. If you feel that you need additional support with your mental health, please call the Samaritans on 116 123, which is a 24-hour helpline. And if you need additional information about mental health issues, please visit Mind at mind.org.uk. For our next episode, I will be doing a deep dive on general anxiety disorder. For those of you wishing to read along with us, the next book will be Dandelion Angel by C.B. Calico, which you can find more details at our website, which is mentalhealthbookclub.com. We would really love to hear what you think about this podcast. Please get in touch with us at our Facebook page, which is the Mental Health Book Club, or at our Twitter, which is at MHBC_podcast. And if you like the podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.